It is one of the most unsettling mysteries in the United States. Here is the story of the Black Dahlia, a case that still haunts Los Angeles and anyone who hears it. Picture a quiet winter morning, a vacant lot in a new neighborhood, the sun just high enough to soften the cold. A young mother pushes a stroller down the sidewalk. She glances toward an empty field and freezes. At first, the thing in the grass looks like a mannequin from a store window. The skin seems too pale, too smooth, too still. Then the truth hits with a force that steals the breath. It is the body of a young woman, and what has been done to her is beyond anything most people can imagine. The discovery takes place on January 15, 1947, in a stretch of Los Angeles that is still being built out, with wide streets, few trees, and houses going up block by block. A reporter's city, a city of dancers and dreamers, a city that sells hope by the yard and keeps its shadows close. Police are called, neighbors gather, faces tight, coats pulled close against the morning air. Officers step into the lot and walk closer. No blood pools on the ground. There are no footprints that make sense. The body has been cut in half at the waist and laid out with care, as if placed for someone to find. The face bears wounds that turn a smile into a mask. The skin looks scrubbed clean. Whoever did this took their time. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. The crime scene feels staged, almost theatrical. The lower half of the body is set a short distance from the upper half. The arms are raised and bent. The head is tilted slightly to the side, the dark hair spread like a halo against the dead grass. Officers glance at one another and then at the street, where more people have stopped to stare. They start to push the crowd back, but word spreads fast and people keep coming. A city that is used to looking away now can't stop looking. In these first hours, the case becomes a story, and the story will soon become a legend that never quite stops growing. Before the autopsy, before the headlines, before the rumors and the theories, there is a name. The victim is Elizabeth Short. She is 22 years old. She liked black clothing, movie houses, and late-night coffee. She wanted something more than the small towns she had known. Her family came from Massachusetts. She had been to Florida, to California, back and forth again, chasing work, chasing comfort, chasing a break that kept slipping away. Friends remember a soft voice, a nervous laugh, and a wish to be in pictures. She carried photographs, letters, and a steady hope that tomorrow could be better than today. In a city that can swallow people whole, she kept moving. To understand the shock of this case, it helps to see the city the way it was in 1947. The war had just ended, soldiers were coming home, jobs were shifting, people poured into Los Angeles from everywhere, drawn by sun and the silver glow of Hollywood. New neighborhoods stood side by side with empty fields, nightclubs buzzed, streetcars rattled, newspapers fought for readers every morning and every evening. The city felt fast and loose, full of promise and danger. The police force was large, but the rules were not the rules of today. Evidence could go missing. Crowds could trample a scene. Reporters, cops, and some men who were neither could all show up at once and fight to control the story. The Black Dahlia case landed in the middle of all of that. The name itself, Black Dahlia, sprang up within days. Some said it came from a popular film called The Blue Dahlia. Others said it came from her fondness for black dresses and dark shoes, the way she wore her hair, the way she stood out in a crowd. The name was catchy, dramatic, cruel. It did what names do in a city built on illusions. It separated the person from the person's life. The public whispered about the Black Dahlia and forgot for a time that she was Elizabeth, a young woman who wrote home, who tried to land steady work, who borrowed a room now and then and worried about rent. A case like this strips a person down to the last known facts. But the truth is that a person is always more than the facts. The week before her death, Elizabeth moved between rooms and couches, between hope and doubt. A traveling salesman nicknamed Red gave her a ride from San Diego to Los Angeles. He was married. He said he wanted to help. He dropped her at the Biltmore Hotel in downtown LA on January 9th. She waited in the lobby. She was seen talking to people. At some point, she stepped out into the evening and into the city, and from that moment, the trail grows thin. Some said she went to a bar nearby. Some said she met someone new. In a city of millions, 6 days can be a lifetime. When the autopsy is done, the cold details deepen the horror. The body was drained of blood, the skin was washed. The cut at the waist is precise, straight, made between the bones in a way that suggests skill. The face shows deep cuts at the mouth. There are signs she was beaten. The doctors say she died from the wounds and the shock, and from blows to the head. The careful cut and the clean body suggest a place of death somewhere else, a place with water, tools, privacy. The field where she was found was a stage, not a workshop. The killer had strong nerves and time to act without fear of being caught. Then a twist. A call comes to a newspaper office. A man says he is the one who killed Elizabeth. He says he will send a parcel with her things. Days later, a small bundle shows up at the paper. The package has been wiped with gasoline, likely to remove fingerprints. Inside are items that belong to her. Photos, papers, perhaps a birth certificate, the kind of things people keep to anchor a moving life. There is an address book as well, with a name in it that will pull detectives into a ring of nightclubs, landlords, and small-time show business. The letters that follow, some made with words cut from magazines, taunt the police and the press. The writer signs as the Avenger. Some believe the letters are from the killer. Others think they come from a man convinced he is smarter than the city and hungry for attention. Detectives chase leads across Los Angeles. They talk to waitresses, theater ushers, artists, actors, and men who hang out in lobbies, checking the faces that move through the glow of the city at night. They knock on doors in boarding houses and back rooms. They bring in the salesman who gave her a ride, and he answers their questions again and again. He passes a lie test of the era and goes home. They talk to a nightclub figure whose name shows up in that address book. He knew her. She stayed at his home for a short time. He becomes a focus, then the focus shifts. The case grows heavy with rumors. There are talkers in every corner, and more than one person feels the urge to confess to a crime they did not commit. There are dozens of false confessions. The police must sort the attention seekers from the dangerous few. In these early weeks, the press prints big headlines and tiny truths. The stories sell papers, and the papers pressure the police. Details leak before they should. A city that loves a show gets a grotesque one. People pick sides on suspects based on a single quote in a column. A person's life becomes a puzzle and a battleground. Through it all, the image of the field, the careful pose, and the washed skin refuse to fade. Some think the killer was a doctor, a medical student, or a butcher. Others think he was a man used to hurting people, a man who would have known how to keep calm and move with purpose. The case seems to invite theories, and the more theories pile up, the harder the truth becomes to see. Then comes another surge of hope. Detectives collect notes and letters and trace the postmarks. They review the handwriting. They send that address book to be studied. A name rises, then falls. A hotel bellman draws attention for his interest in the case, and the way he seems to know too much, but the evidence does not hold. The city looks to one more lead, and then another. The killer seems always one step ahead or nowhere at all. There are whispers about police politics, about pressure from people who don't like their names in print, about the case being too hot to hold and too painful to let go. Each time the story feels like it will cool, another strange detail rises. A woman shows up at a police station and says she heard things in an apartment building that chilled her blood. She talks about cries in the night and the smell of something wrong. Officers check and find nothing solid, but the story spreads anyway. A man comes forward and says he saw a car parked by the lot in the early hours. Lights off, engine ticking. He cannot name the make with confidence. He is sure about the hour, less sure about the day. This is how the case goes. Just enough light to show a shape, not enough to show a face. There is also the matter of the timing. Why was the body left in daylight, in a place where it would be found in the morning by anyone passing by? Some believe the killer wanted the scene discovered fast so the shock would be complete. Others think the killer misjudged the hour or felt that leaving the body at night would invite a different kind of attention. There is an eerie confidence in the way the body was posed, as if the person who did this wanted the photograph in the paper to look a certain way, wanted the city to feel a certain chill. A few years later, in 1950, one suspect earns attention far beyond the others, a doctor with a house that seems to vibrate with secrets. A recording device set up by investigators captures fragments of conversation that sound like confessions, or close to it. The doctor speaks in a way that suggests guilt, or at least the thrill of being close to evil. The recordings are messy, hard to hear, full of static and half-finished lines. Some believe they hold the key to the case. Others say they are a mirror that shows what the listener wants to see. The doctor moves away. The case does not close. Theories multiply. Some say the Black Dahlia was the victim of someone who hated women, who wanted power and found it through pain. Some say she crossed paths with a man who lived in the edge zones of Hollywood, someone who knew small producers, photographers, and men who liked to pretend they could open doors. Maybe he promised help, maybe he promised dinner, maybe he said he could get her a job on a set as an extra. A car pulls to the curb, a hand waves, a door opens, and a life takes a turn that cannot be reversed. In a city of chance meetings, the wrong meeting can change everything. Connections to other crimes are raised and then dropped. In Cleveland, years before, a series of brutal killings shows a similar mix of nerve and skill. Some wonder if the same person could have moved west, or if cruelty simply looks the same no matter the city. There are also whispers about a surgeon who lived close to the lot where the body was found. The proximity is striking, and yet for every person who says that means something, another says it proves nothing. Los Angeles is a map of many lives. People live next door to horrors and never know it. Under the bright lights of the LAPD headquarters, the detectives keep going. They pull phone records, they check bus depots and rooming house ledgers, they look at old unsolved files for a pattern, they turn over the oddest stones, the ones that make most people look away. They examine photographs from late-night parties and see if anyone in the background matches anyone in the witness list. They talk to makeup artists, theater costumers, and men who sell ice. They ask about a woman with dark hair and pale skin who seemed lonely and hopeful at the same time. The way the body was cleaned becomes a subject of fierce debate. Some say only a person with training would take the time to wash the skin and remove blood. Others say the killer could have used a simple wash tub and the patience of a hunter. The precision of the cut at the waist still pushes people toward the idea of a professional. But a person can learn terrible skills without a classroom. The question grows into something bigger. Was the killer trying to hide traces, or was the cleaning part of the display? Was the body meant to be seen as a sculpture of control, a twisted message about power and fear? Every 1 to 2 minutes of this story seems to hold a new jolt. A letter appears with a line that only a few people should know. A suspect tells a story that rings true on Monday and false by Friday. A witness changes a detail because time has changed the memory. Meanwhile, the victim's life demands attention. Elizabeth Short had a troubled home. Her father left and then returned years later. She went where she thought she might find a fresh start. She loved the movies and the idea that something amazing could happen at any moment in a city that existed to make the impossible real. Friends say she was kind and hard to read, hopeful and also aware that hope often brings pain when it meets the real world. She was young. None of this should have happened to her. The case twists through the city's power structure. The police chief answers questions in a tight voice. The mayor wants results. The papers thrive. The public settles into the posture of watchers. It is a posture that is still held today, decades later, when people read the old clippings and the new books, and each reader convinces themselves for a moment that they see the solution in the corner of their mind. The truth remains a step away. One of the most unsettling parts of the story is the number of people who claimed guilt. Why confess to something so dark? The answers are tragic and petty at once. Some wanted attention. Some believed they had committed the crime during a blackout and needed the police to tell them if it was true. Some wanted to feel important, to put their face in the mirror of history, even if it was for the worst reason. Each false confession stole time from the search for the real killer. Each one tugged the case down a side street until the facts snapped it back to the main road. The way the body was left has no easy match in other crimes of the time. It sits somewhere between a killer who wants to hide and a killer who wants to be seen. The vacant lot was open but not busy at dawn. Anyone who lived nearby might have stumbled upon the scene, but the actual witness was a mother on her morning walk. The risk to the killer was real, and yet the risk seems to have been part of the plan. Was the point to inflict shock on the entire city? Was the point to turn a woman into a headline so the person responsible could crow in secret? Even now, trying to understand the mind behind it stirs a cold fear. As the years turn into decades, new people take up the case. Retired detectives study boxes of old reports. Writers compare details and map the city as it was in 1947, when downtown still had its old theaters and the hills rolled like a secret. Family members of suspects come forward, convinced they recognize a detail or a voice on an old recording. A son accuses a father. A new book names a new suspect and builds a case out of gestures and phrases. A TV show draws a line between this crime and that one. It remains possible that someone living knows exactly who did this and why, and that person has decided silence is the only safe choice. There is a temptation to make the Black Dahlia into a symbol of Hollywood's fake promises, of men who prey on women, of the way the media turns harm into spectacle, of a city that builds a dream factory and powers it with stories pulled from real lives. Symbols are tidy. Real people are not. Elizabeth Short was a person. She got hungry, she got cold, she made small talk. She wrote letters and waited for letters. She tried to plan her days and often ran out of days that felt good. She joked with friends who were also a little lost. She trimmed her hair and stared at her face in a mirror and wished for something solid to hold on to. Her death stole all of that and then rebuilt her as a myth. When the camera in your mind returns to that empty lot, there is a quiet that seems endless. The police cars have pulled away, the reporters have thrown their lines into the paper, and the sun has moved higher. The grass is trampled, a stain of bright light sits where the body was found, as if the place itself refuses to recall the dark shape that lay there. A dog trots past and noses the dirt. A bird lands on a pole and watches nothing in particular. The people who live on the nearby block step to their porches and stare at the field with a look that says, this is not what their street is for. Home is supposed to be safe. Home is not supposed to be this. Every investigation has moments when it almost breaks. In this case, there were many close calls, a note with the right turn of phrase, a suspect who knew about the scrubbed skin before the papers did, a lost set of prints, a witness who died too soon, a building that was torn down when it might have held a room with a tiny clue hidden under a floorboard. The city changed so fast back then that even a few months could erase a path the detectives needed to walk again. In another era, with other tools, maybe the case would have closed. In another era, maybe it never would have happened. And yet hope is stubborn. Files today still sit on shelves that are not far from where they sat in 1947. And when a new person opens them, the story stands up again and asks to be solved. Science grows, old letters are tested. The smooth surface of a stump yields new hints. A name that was once a whisper becomes louder. The weight of time can smother a case, but it can also press out truths that were once lost in noise. People keep asking. People keep caring. The reason is simple: the case feels like a wound that belongs not just to a family but to a city and a country. It is a reminder that the worst kind of human act can sit right next to a sidewalk and wait for a stranger to find it. The Black Dahlia story has long fed myths. Some say Elizabeth was part of a dog circle. Others paint her as a drifter living a double life. The record shows something different. She was poor. She moved a lot. She hoped for work and sometimes fell in with people who said they could help. She told stories to keep herself going. She borrowed grace where she found it. She made mistakes. She was not the person the headlines made her out to be. Seeing her clearly is a way of honoring her, of cutting through the fog and remembering that the victim is not an idea. She is a person whose life mattered. What then is left? A city that weathered the shock and went on building, a police force that learned harsh lessons and shifted little by little toward better practice, a family that never fully healed, a case that draws in new readers, new viewers, new night owls who sit in their kitchens and stare at old photographs and feel a chill even with the lights on. The scene in the lot still has the power to stop time. It is simple and brutal. No gunfire, no dramatic chase. Just a quiet corner of a street, a shape in the grass, and the knowledge that someone in this world chose to do this and then walked away. In the end, the mystery holds because every clear road breaks into branches. If the killer was someone with medical training, why leave such a public scene and risk being seen? If the killer was an impulsive stranger, how could the cuts be so clean and the body so thoroughly washed? If the letters were from the real killer, why reveal private items and then hide again? If the letters were from a fraud, how did he get those items at all? Each question bends back on itself. The case does not invite a single answer, it demands a web of answers, and that web is still missing crucial strands. Think again of the first witness, the one who thought she was looking at a mannequin lying in the grass. That first mistake seems important. It is as if the city itself wanted to pretend, for one heartbeat, that what it saw was not real. A mannequin is a lifeless stand-in for a person. It is a false body wearing a dream. In 1947, Los Angeles was covered in false bodies wearing dreams. Store windows were full of them. Movie sets held them up like mirrors for the crowd. The Black Dahlia case ripped the mask and forced the city to look at the cost of its own hunger. That is why the story still stings. That is why it still holds the mind at night, long after the last page is turned. There are small mercies to remember. People who barely knew Elizabeth gave statements for hours because it felt right. A detective missed a family dinner to chase a lead that went nowhere, and he went out again the next day. A telephone operator flagged a strange call and wrote down a detail that made its way into the file. A neighbor brought coffee to officers standing in the cold. The case is filled with harm, but around the harm, ordinary people did ordinary good things. Those simple acts do not solve the case, they do something else. They show how a city tries to heal itself in the face of something it cannot fix. Until then, the Black Dahlia case remains the kind of story that makes the heart beat a little faster and the room feel a little colder. A bright morning, a field, a body arranged in stillness. A city's breath held for 78 years, and counting. Elizabeth Short deserves more than a haunting. She deserves peace and the dignity of a final answer. Telling her story with care and refusing to turn her into a myth is one small way to honor her. Keeping eyes open to the dangers that made her vulnerable is another. The city that failed her can still do better for others. The story ends where it began, a simple street, a quiet lot, a truth too heavy for the morning air. Someone knew her last steps, someone planned their moves, someone cleaned a room, wiped a blade, and carried a body to a car. Someone parked where the grass met the curb, lifted a terrible weight, and placed it just so. Then that someone drove away and became, at least in public, a face in a crowd. If that person ever looked back, the view would have been of a city waking up and not yet knowing it was about to be changed. What do you think happened in those missing days between the hotel lobby and the field? Was the killer someone she knew and trusted, or did she meet a stranger who spoke well and smiled at the right moment? Do you believe the letters came from the true killer, or were they the work of an imitator trying to hold the spotlight? Which detail in this case feels most important to you? The precise cut, the cleaned skin, the pose in the grass, the phone call to the paper, the house full of whispers. Each detail could be the key, and that is why this story refuses to fade. If this story moved you, add your voice to the search for truth. Share your theory in the comments. Say what clue you think matters most and what twist you think many people miss. If you want more deep dives into mysteries that still echo, subscribe to True Crime Unsolved and hit like so this story reaches more eyes and ears. There are more cases to explore, more names to honor, and more questions to ask. The next clue might be in the next story, and the next story might be the one that finally unlocks a door this city closed long ago. Sources: Demander at ChatGPT.